living fully before life ends. The Buddhist way to meet life. We show up in this life. No one asks us first. No one explains the rules. One day you open your eyes and you're already here, in the middle of a world that's already moving, carried by a current that everyone follows but few ever stop to ask, where is it going? If you really think about it, every human life comes down to two events: being born and dying. Everything else, love, work, money, heartbreak, ambition, all of it happens in the space between, a space whose length no one knows. So if everything we build will eventually come apart, if everyone we love will eventually leave or be left, perhaps the first question is not whether life has a final meaning. Perhaps the nearer question is simpler and more urgent. While this life is here, how do we meet it? How do we actually live this life, not just pass through it? What does it mean to live fully? Is it possible to be alive, busy, loved, even successful, and still somehow absent from the life we are living? And can someone whose days are consumed by hardship and struggle even begin to ask that? Over 2,500 years ago, a man named Siddhartha Gautama began with a restlessness not entirely different from this. He had wealth, family, comfort, everything the world says should make a life complete. And yet, something didn't fit. Instead of ignoring that feeling, he followed it all the way to its root. What he found there became a teaching that has helped human beings find their footing for over 2.5 millennia. Before we can talk about living fully, we need to look clearly at what this life actually is. How does it work? What are we standing on? There's a feeling many people carry but rarely name. It's not always depression. It's not always crisis. It's more like a low hum, a sense that something is slightly off, even when everything on the surface seems fine. You have a job, a home, people who care about you, and yet, at odd moments, late at night or in the middle of a crowd, you feel a gap between yourself and your own life, as if you're watching it from a small distance. You can't quite name what's missing, but something is. One Buddhist word that points toward this is dukkha. Most people translate it as suffering, but that only captures the loudest part. Dukkha also includes something quieter, the subtle sense that things don't quite fit together the way we want them to. Like wearing a shoe that's almost the right size. You can walk in it. You can function. But with every step, there's a faint discomfort you've learned to ignore. And the reason it doesn't fit has to do with something the Buddha observed about life itself. Everything moves. Your body is not the same body it was 10 years ago. Your mind is not the same mind it was this morning. A relationship changes while you are still inside it. Nothing holds its shape. This is impermanence, anicca, and you don't have to believe in it as a philosophy. You just have to look. Dukkha appears where our desire for things to stay meets the reality that they can't. We hold on to youth, love, security, identity, and when life moves, as it always does, we feel it as loss. We feel like something went wrong. And sometimes, in the human sense, things do go wrong. People hurt each other. Bodies fail. Loss arrives before we are ready. Life can be unfair in ways no spiritual language should ever dismiss. But beneath all of that is also this simple truth. Things move. What changes was never going to stay still. And the tighter we hold on, the sharper the ache becomes. Once you see this clearly, something inside begins to soften. The ache you've been carrying is not always a sign that your life is broken. Sometimes, It is a sign that you've been trying to hold still something that was never meant to be held still. There is nothing wrong with you for feeling that ache. Every human being who has loved, hoped, or cared deeply has felt it. The Buddha did not point to dukkha to make anyone feel worse. He pointed to it because you can't begin to heal what you refuse to see. And seeing clearly, without adding guilt or self-blame on top, is itself an act of courage. This is why the Buddha spoke again and again about the nature of conditioned life. Things change. Clinging to what changes brings suffering, and what we call self is far less solid than we usually believe. These are not beliefs to force on yourself. They are truths to gently verify. Look at your body, emotions, thoughts, roles, fears, and hopes. They arise, stay for a while, and pass. Even the person you think you are is not a fixed object, but a living process. And strangely, this does not have to be frightening. It can be freeing. If everything is moving, then pain is not a prison. Confusion is not your final identity. Fear, too, is something that arises and passes. Even suffering, when seen clearly, is something that can be understood. The Buddha didn't say life is meaningless. He said something far more practical. Life is a process, and how you meet that process changes everything. The facts of the day may not change, but the way the mind meets them can change, and that can make all the difference. So if life is always changing, then living fully cannot mean controlling every change, collecting every experience, or making every moment pleasant. It must mean learning how to meet this changing life with a mind that is awake, honest, and free enough not to be dragged away by everything it touches. Most people, when they hear live fully, picture one of two things. The first looks like adventure. Travel more, experience more, pack as much as possible into the years you have. The bucket list approach. But some people can fill every hour and still feel strangely untouched by their own life. They've been everywhere, done everything, collected stories and achievements. Yet something still doesn't land. Because filling a life and living a life fully are two different things. The second picture is more internal. Live in the present moment. You've heard it 1,000 times. But someone scrolling their phone for hours, their body is in the present, but their awareness is not free. Someone shouting in road rage is absorbed in the now, yet no one would call that living fully. So being present alone isn't the whole answer. What's missing is the quality of awareness you bring to the moment. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha did not leave presence as something vague by itself. The formula is fuller. Atapi sampajano satima, ardent, clearly comprehending, and mindful. Sati, mindfulness, is the ability to be here, to know what is happening as it happens. It is like turning on the light in a room. It lets you see what is present. Sampajanya, clear comprehension, is the ability to understand what you're seeing. Why am I doing this? Does it serve what truly matters? Am I choosing consciously or reacting out of habit? Is this action leading toward freedom or deeper confusion? Sati reveals. Sampajanya understands. The old commentaries describe sampajanya through purpose, suitability, domain, and non-delusion. In ordinary language, do I know why I'm doing this? Does it fit the values I want to cultivate? Do I know what state my mind is in? Reacting, clinging, resisting, or choosing? And am I seeing clearly, without layering hopes and fears on top? When you bring this kind of awareness to a moment, even an ordinary one, something shifts. You're no longer going through the motions. You can feel the difference between a choice and a reaction, between being pulled by habit and being guided by wisdom. In that clarity, there is a quiet kind of freedom. And in the deepest sense, this is where the Buddha's path begins to open toward awakening, Bodhi. Not awakening as a spiritual image to chase or a perfect identity to become, but awakening as seeing more and more clearly, seeing craving before obeying it, seeing anger before feeding it, seeing fear without being ruled by it, seeing that what changes was never meant to be possessed. For most of us, this does not begin with a grand realization. It begins with one honest return to the breath, to the body, to the person in front of us, to the truth of what is happening now. Every honest return is a small movement toward freedom. You don't need the moment to be special. You don't need life to be easy. The invitation is simply to become a little more awake inside whatever is happening. That, being present with understanding, is much closer to what the Buddha pointed to as a life lived well. But if this sounds simple, it is not always easy, because the mind has an old habit. Even when life is happening right here, it keeps leaving the room. If presence with understanding is so close, why do we spend so much of our lives without it? Because there's a layer between you and your experience that runs almost constantly, and you've lived with it so long that you've forgotten it's there. Picture this. You're sitting with a cup of coffee in the morning. What's actually happening? The warmth of the cup against your hand, the taste, the light coming through the window. That's the moment. But where are you? Replaying yesterday, planning today, worrying about a bill. Your hands are holding the cup. Your mouth is tasting the coffee. But your attention left the room a long time ago. You're living in the commentary, the mental narration that plays over everything. It happens at dinner with your family. Your mouth is answering, but your mind is already at tomorrow's meeting. It happens when you're with your child. You're on the floor with them, but your eyes keep pulling toward the phone. It happens beside someone you love. Your body is there, but your attention has traveled somewhere they can't follow. The Buddha described this with extraordinary care. He spoke of sanya, perception, and sankhara, mental formations, as part of the way experience is shaped. The mind recognizes, labels, reacts, remembers, expects. Before we know it, we are not meeting the moment freshly. We are meeting it through fear, desire, habit, and memory. A word is spoken, and we don't just hear the word. We hear old wounds. A small problem appears, and we don't just meet the problem. We meet the stories the mind builds around it. This always happens to me. I can't handle this. Something is wrong with my life. Something is wrong with me. And here is where the teaching becomes deeply compassionate. The Buddha didn't say, "Stop thinking." That would be like telling your lungs to stop breathing. He pointed to something gentler. Begin by noticing when you've drifted. The moment you notice, "Oh, I'm not actually here. I'm 3 hours into the future worrying about something that may never happen." In that very moment, you've already returned. You don't have to force your way back. The noticing is the return. And then you'll drift again. And then you'll notice again. And then you'll return again. That cycle is not failure. It is the practice. The point was never to stop the mind from wandering. The point was to keep coming back. Each time you come back, even for a few seconds, you are fully alive in that moment. And if you feel like you drift more than you return, that's okay too. The fact that you noticed you were drifting means the path had already begun again. That awareness, however brief, is not small. It is a return to what is real. Still, it is one thing to return to a cup of coffee, or to a breath, or to the person sitting across from you. It is another thing to return when life is heavy, when the problem is real, and when the heart is tired. Everything we've talked about so far might sound clear in theory, but what about when life is genuinely hard? It's one thing to talk about presence when your morning is quiet. It's another thing when you're staring at bills you can't pay, when your child needs something you can't afford, when your body is failing you, when you were never handed a fair start. No guidance, no safety net, just survival from day one. Does living fully mean anything when your day is consumed by just getting through? Let me be honest. Difficulty is real. Poverty is real. Illness is real. Grief is real. The Buddha never pretended otherwise. He did not speak only to monks in forests. He also spoke to householders, people with work, money, family duties, debts, friendships, and worries. In the Sigalovada Sutta, he spoke about relationships, responsibilities, livelihood, and the ordinary duties of lay life. In the Anana Sutta, he named simple forms of household happiness: having enough, using what one has wisely, being free from debt, and living without blame. One of the deepest forms of happiness in ordinary life is the happiness of a clear conscience. The Buddha did not ask lay people to despise their lives. He met them where they stood. But he also pointed out something that changes how we carry hardship. Pain may be unavoidable, but the mind often adds another wound on top. There is a teaching where the Buddha uses the image of two arrows. The first arrow is the pain life brings: illness, loss, fear, a body that hurts, a situation you did not choose. The second arrow is what the mind adds. Why me? This should not be happening. Everyone else has it easier. I can't bear this. My life is ruined. The first arrow may already be painful, but the second arrow is the one we keep shooting into ourselves. This does not mean poverty is only a mindset. It does not mean grief is your fault. It means that on top of real pain, the mind can create another layer: fear, resentment, comparison, despair. And that layer drains the energy you need to meet what is actually in front of you. The practice is not to deny the first arrow. It is to notice the second. This is not about telling yourself to think positive. It is about learning to tell the difference between the weight that belongs to the situation and the weight the mind is adding. When you can see that difference, even faintly, you begin to carry only what is actually yours to carry. The Buddha called the practice of applying effort wisely sama vayama, right effort. Right effort is not forcing yourself harder in every direction. It is learning where to place your energy, what to abandon, what to protect, what to cultivate, and what to sustain. When there is something to be done, do it clearly. See the problem, see what you have, see the next step, and take it. When you rest, rest fully. When you sit with your family, sit with your family. Don't let worry steal the only hours of warmth you have in the day. Even in the middle of the mess, practice can be very small. One conscious breath before reacting. One clear step instead of collapsing into panic. One moment of warmth not stolen by worry. These moments don't require a quiet life or a meditation cushion. They are how the path enters a difficult day. And if you're in a season of real hardship right now, the fact that you're still standing, still trying, still showing up for the people who depend on you already counts for something. The path does not ask you to pretend the storm is not there. It begins with knowing, this is a storm. And in that knowing, however small, there can still be a moment of clarity. Brief, but real. Sometimes, that's enough to take the next step. Perhaps this is why presence matters most when life is difficult. Not because it makes life easy, but because it keeps you from disappearing from the very life that needs you. And one day when you look back, the question may not be whether life was easy. The question may be whether you were truly there for it. There will come a day when you look back at your life. Maybe it's a quiet afternoon many years from now. Maybe it's sitting beside someone you love, knowing the hours are numbered. In that moment, the things you spent so much energy on, career milestones, bank balances, what people thought of you, may feel strangely light. And a different question will rise. Was I there? In the moments that mattered, was I actually present? There is a particular kind of pain that comes from realizing you were absent from your own life. You were in the room. You were at the dinner table. You were beside them. But your mind was elsewhere, scrolling, planning, worrying about something that, looking back, you can't even remember. And the moment, the real one, passed without you in it. If only I had listened that evening. If only I had said what I felt. If only I had put down the worry long enough to see what was right in front of me. That pain doesn't always come from having done something wrong in a dramatic way. It comes from having not been there when you were there. A related teaching speaks to this with unusual clarity. In the Bhattacharya Sutta, the Buddha turns our attention back to the only place life can actually be lived. Do not chase after the past. Do not place your life in a future not yet reached. See clearly what is present. Do today what needs to be done. Because who knows? Tomorrow, death may come. There is no bargaining with mortality. What makes a day truly auspicious is not that it is perfect. It is how you meet it. Whether you showed up with a clear mind, whether you loved while love was possible, whether you listened while the person was still there, whether you lived the day actually given to you instead of postponing your life into a future that had never been promised. Living fully doesn't protect you from loss. Nothing does. But it means that when loss comes, you carry only the grief itself, without the second weight of if only. And if living fully means being present for your own life, it also means being present for the life in front of you. When someone near you is suffering, and you don't rush to fix it, don't hurry to say it'll be fine, but simply sit with them and let them feel that their pain has been witnessed. That is also fullness. The Buddha called this karuna, compassion. Not pity, not sentimentality, and not absorbing another person's pain until you collapse under it. Karuna is the willingness to face suffering without turning away. Sometimes it acts. It brings food, makes the phone call, tells the truth gently, or sets a boundary so harm does not continue. And sometimes it simply stays, close enough that another person remembers they are not alone. When you offer that kind of presence, to anyone, even to yourself, something opens. The pain doesn't always disappear, but it changes. It becomes bearable. It becomes something that can be held. This is not about living perfectly. No one is present all the time. No one loves without ever becoming distracted, afraid, tired, or confused. The path is not asking for perfection. It is asking for sincerity, to return more often, to listen a little more fully, to notice when the person in front of you is still here. A shared meal, a hand held, a message answered with care, a breath taken before anger becomes speech, a moment of silence instead of rushing to defend yourself. These are not dramatic, but they are the fabric of a life, and one day, they may be what your heart remembers most. A verse in the Dhammapada gathers the heart of the Buddha's teaching into 3 simple lines. Not to do evil, to cultivate good, to purify one's mind. This is the teaching of the Buddhas. Do not cause harm. Grow what is wholesome. Clear the mind, so you can actually see. In a way, everything we've explored has been moving toward those 3 lines. Meeting impermanence without clinging. Meeting pain without adding the second arrow. Meeting others with compassion. And meeting this life without turning away. And here, awakening becomes more than an idea. To purify the mind is not merely to feel calmer. It is to keep seeing and releasing greed, hatred, and delusion, until the heart is no longer so easily pushed and pulled by everything that changes. This is awakening, not an escape from life, but seeing life so clearly that the heart is no longer imprisoned by it. In that sense, the fullest life is an awakened life. But this is not a standard to shame yourself with. It is a direction, a path, a way of returning again and again to what is true. To live fully, then, is not to chase every experience, make life look impressive, or force yourself into constant happiness. It is to meet this changing life with enough clarity not to be deceived by it, enough kindness not to harden against it, and enough courage not to turn away. This life, you didn't choose when it began. You may not choose when it ends. But this breath, this step, this person in front of you, this moment asking to be met, these are still here. Today is here, and it is worth being truly lived.